Wired observer. I find myself in the hospital, looking up at the ceiling. My vision's getting blurry and I'm struggling to breathe. I look up at the monitor beeping faster and faster beside me. There are so many things I still wanted to do and try before I died. A tear runs down my face and my vision is darkened. I could only hear the sound of a brief door slam and nurses surrounding me, and then I completely blacked out. Nothing surrounds me now, and it is just darkness stretching infinitely, but with every step I take, the evening ripples below me like water. I kept walking for what felt like forever until I heard a deep voice in the distance that drilled fear into my heart. "Humans, they think they can change and cheat death." The voice echoed throughout the darkness, and the ripples around me became more like waves. I was confused, but I knew I couldn't stop, so I kept walking as far as I could, and eventually, I heard a familiar voice talking with someone else, saying something I couldn't quite make out until I got closer in the darkness and could hear it perfectly. "I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing we could do for your son." It was quiet until I heard another voice I instantly recognized. "Then give Onyx's body back to me. I will figure something else out myself. I refuse to let him die like this." Eventually, as I kept walking in the darkness, I followed my father's voice to the best of my ability and reached a strange, dark, large, oozing building. I walked over to the building, pushed as hard as I could against the oozing door with my shoulder. I looked around and instantly locked eyes with what looked like me before he stood the door on the ground and before me the same door also. We both turned our heads at one another, almost like a mirror. I turned to see a boy as I ran as fast as I could, and my eyes looked over to see this other version of my neck and neck with me, racing me to the boy holding the ball of light. But his eyes weren't focused on me. He focused on the boy. And then I looked down at my leg as I felt something snagging me by the foot. The ooze was pulling me down. I watched the other version of me picked up the little boy by his neck, and then he snapped the kid's neck with no regard. Capital R. Capital regard. He took the ball from the child, approached me, and crouched before me with it in his hands. The black ooze had utterly engulfed my body. Then I unexpectedly reached for the ball of light in his hands and pulled him into the dark ooze with me. Then suddenly, the ball of light became more prominent as we both held it in our hands, and it became brighter until it swallowed both of us altogether. Bright light pointed down at me, and I watched as the words loading complete in blue faded from my eyes, and I glared at the light. Where am I? I thought to myself, and then automatically, images and data began to flow into my head like magic. Somehow I knew I was in my father's work office. I looked down at the restraints on my wrists, which were made of metal. My eyes zoomed in on them strangely, and the words "automatic titanium cuff bracelet" came across my eyes in a blue blinking text. What? Is that even possible? I looked at the computer with unlock cuffs blinking on the screen in the corner of my room. Then a strange blue confirmed button appeared on my eyeballs, and I said yes in my head, and then the cuffs on my wrists unlocked, and I glared at my hands and the computer. What's wrong with me? I got up and I stared at all the equipment. It all looked dusty, almost as if nobody had touched it in ages. I turned away from the strange machinery and entered the dark and ominous hallway. My eyes lit up, almost as if I had put the old night vision goggles I had as a child, and suddenly I could see everything in the static blue hue. As I walked, I looked around at the equipment that looked utterly out of place, and the site seemed abandoned. "Hello?" I yelled out, only to receive no response as expected. I continued on my way until I reached an archway that branched into two robotic rooms, and then a strange person stood before me, came out of the room on the right and into the archway and stood before me perfectly still. "Hello?" I yelled out again. And then the person yelled back the exact words. I said the same. I stepped back, and they approached me with a knife at incredible speed. Then I ran away as fast as I could and hid behind some of the boxes in the dark hallway. Then I waited until the individual chasing me would walk beside me. Then it was just at that point I knew what I had to do. I jumped out. I tackled them to the ground, and then I glared into their dark, soulless eyes, and in his eyes reflected a boy with white hair and blue around his eyes. "Hello, Onyx. I am Onyx," his voice said as it crackled and distorted. I studied his appearance and his eyes, and then I looked at my own in the reflection of his eyeballs. And then I fell back a few feet and rested against my box. My thoughts began to compose on my eyeballs in blue flashing text, and then entered my question. Where are the humans that worked here? Question mark? Images of a terrible explosion appeared before my eyes, and then an article about the death of John Onyx and several other brilliant scientists responsible for the ability to completely transfer a human's life into a cyborg's body. Is that what I am? In that case, am I dead? I can't be dead. My father's fine. I glared over at the other version of me, who was now gone, and then I quickly rushed to my feet and began looking for an exit sign. And I found one, and I ran towards it as fast as I could, and then suddenly, the version of me appeared in front of me, and he pushed me to the ground harshly, and his eyes began to leak a black oily substance as he repeated my father's voice back to me. "Onyx will be the most remarkable scientist in all of humanity's future, and he's got a good heart from his mother." Then another voice line played in my father's voice. "This first version of Onyx is mindless and does not possess my boy's kindness or love. Instead, something else has entered this cyborg's body before he could, and I must destroy it." And then screaming sounds began to play that sounded like my father's voice, and then I watched as his head turned towards the knife, and then I realized what had happened. He murdered my father and the other scientists, and he caused an explosion as a cover-up. What the hell is this monster? He vanished instantly, and then I ran straight up the exit stairs and made it outside. I saw that there was nothing but a foundation remaining. The area where the company contained him and me was completely underground, and it explained why the explosion didn't reach us. And then suddenly, something shot me in the eyes and I couldn't see, and a blue text error message popped across my face. I turned back toward where the shot came from, and could still sense the bullet's trajectory. If only my father had never turned me into this. If only he had loved me instead of trying to force me to improve. I saw an old rusted knife next to me and picked it up. "Humans, they think they can change and cheat death, but the truth is, I am now dead." And then, the next thing I know, I was in front of my father holding the knife in my hands. And then I stared out the broken glass window that my father's body stood beside, and I watched as the reactor that powered the building exploded, and the bright light engulfed me instantly. A bright light pointed down at me, and I watched as the words "loading complete" in blue faded from my eyes, and I glared at the light. But this time, I knew what it was. I am the Wired Observer, and I am free. Wow. That one was hard to get through. I think the author has a good idea in his head of what he wanted to write about. He just wasn't able to get it down on paper or turn it into words. So I would probably give this one a pass. I wouldn't recommend this read. If you're still here, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for sticking through the video. I will see you on the next one. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, all that fun stuff. And bye.